did see some crazy shit on Twitter, but I feel like that's just become like standard on Twitter. But I did see a video of someone who rolled up when Agent from AMP, which is the same group that Kai Cenat is in for context. Somebody just like rolled up to him while he was streaming, like driving out of his driveway. And it was like, yo, dude, I walked 5 hours to come say what's up. Can I get a shout out? So that was my dark view on the Twitch world this morning, where it's like, dude, shit's getting out of hand. Like, not only did he walk 5 hours to get to somebody's home and just think that that was like an okay thing to do, but then they'd be like, dude, I just like, I'm trying to grind at this Twitch thing. Can I just get like a shout out or something? That had me like, there's a lot of days where I go back and forth on like, not the ethics of Twitch, but just thinking about Twitch as a whole. And the constant back and forth, the push and pull of being a good streamer and being very transparent and open with your chat, but also like not getting to this weird parasocial point where that's a thing that's happening. The two parts of it are like, why would anyone be like, yes, it's a normal thing to do? Exactly. The two parts are like, one, does the person realize what they're doing is like really crazy in like a not good way? Like, there were so many questions I had, like the kid was like 18. Like, did they just tell their parents like, oh, yo, I'm headed out for the day, and then they walked to go to a streamer's house to just like pull up to their house? And that was scary to me, to like, what, like, what's the detach mentally there where you're like, oh yeah, this is like a chill thing to do, like this is a normal thing to do. So yeah, that was like a really scary, like, okay, one, assuming I guess the best faith interpretation is they just like really want to make it as a streamer, and they see that as a thing to like to do, which that's the best faith interpretation. Is like, it's scary that people want this shit so bad that they're gonna like go encroach upon someone's personal life to do it. And then the worst faith interpretation is like, yeah, which exactly, even if that is the best faith interpretation, it's not good. It's really bad, in fact. The other side is like, this person is unwell and it does not pass like the mental checks that go on, that are like, is this a thing that I can do? Is this normal to do? Should I do this? And all of those will be like, no, really no. The crazy part is, you had 5 hours to think of how bad an idea that was, and you didn't arrive at that conclusion, assuming that they actually walked 5 hours. That's the whole, clickbait Twitter headline. And I will say, chat, I was amazed. I was truly amazed by how well Agent handled the situation. Like, I do not know how he did. Like, I don't think anyone else would have handled that situation as well as he did, where he was like very calm. Because I feel like when you talk to someone who's like, yeah, I walked 5 hours to come meet you at your house, bro, like, I would not be like, yo, I'm gonna stop to like roll down my window and talk to this guy. Like, he could be dangerous type of thing. I would have been calling the police and preparing to move. Also, luckily, what came up in that conversation is he's like, if you keep going up that driveway, we have security and they are not going to treat you how I'm treating you right now. Which, one, is like crazy. I'm very glad they have security, but like insane that that's the point we're getting to, where streamers are big enough that they weren't having like private security at their homes, which granted are these like mega mansions with a million expensive cars and expensive stuff in them, which like I get why that would be a target area for people to get up to no good. But yeah, I wouldn't walk 5 hours to meet anyone. It's crazy. But yeah, the worst faith interpretation is like, okay, there's something like, something is off, and they don't understand that that's like a weird, bad thing to be doing. So I don't know, every couple months one of these things will pop up where I'm like, damn, dude, this, like, there's a lot of things that go back and forth on like streaming isn't a real job and like it's just so easy and all this stuff. Like, I think the act of streaming and content, it is difficult in ways that are just so wildly different than a, you know, your what you'd consider a traditional job. But I, at least purely from a job perspective, I don't know that that's an issue anyone faces with their job. Yes, there are still very weird, crazy people that do that to people outside of their job or whatever they do for whatever reason. But yeah, every once in a while you get one of these things where you're like, damn, this is just, be careful. That's kind of the final end note here, was just like, be careful. You know, a good friendly reminder that you don't know the people you watch stream personally. You know, it's a community and it's a weirdly balanced relationship. You know, just always don't be afraid to think about that for a second, you know? Always selective with who I share info with. Absolutely. I think everybody should be. And again, I look back and I think I am much better now than I used to be about sharing information. And again, it is this really tough line to ride, because if I just sit here and say nothing about myself and only talk about the video game I'm playing, like, that's not that fun. I don't even have fun doing that if I was just sitting here like mainlining a video game and sharing nothing. Like, it's fun talking about my life and telling funny stories about you know, ice cream called coffee and love nuts. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things that always makes me think like, all right, remember to think about some things before you share them online, stuff like that. Because I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but I feel like when I grew up, it was very much, you know, the age of the internet. I grew up on the internet, had access to the internet from a pretty early age, like pretty unmonitored access to the internet at a pretty early age. And I think in school and from the people around me, all you ever learned about being on the internet was like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And I think it was kind of that blanket approach, which there's actually a lot of interesting stuff about like the DARE generation, they call it, which is the generations that had this program in school called Drug and Alcohol Resistance Education. It was like the DARE was like the title of it. I don't know if everybody had that or not. In the US, I had that when I was in school, where in like 5th grade, some cop came and was like, don't do drugs, they're bad for you. And a lot of research has found that those generations that had that education actually struggle the worst with drug and alcohol abuse, because they aren't actually given any like information about what it's like, how to solve it, how to recognize signs of it. Instead they just say, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. So when you go and do it and you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad, you don't have any of the education to like know how to navigate things. Or like, oh yeah, don't drink, don't drink, don't drink. So when you drink and you're like, oh, that's fine. But then you have people that like, you don't know how to recognize the signs of like, okay, is this a problem? Or things like that. A lot of signs show that those generations are actually like the worst in terms of drug and alcohol abuse. And to compare that to being on the internet, I think when I was growing up, all the school stuff about going online, of course there's like, you know, stranger danger and don't do this, but online it was like, don't share anything online, don't do anything online, don't do anything online. And I think we pivoted to this point where that became very unrealistic, with especially social media kind of became very unrealistic, where before, yeah, it was like if you were just playing Minecraft, like, yeah, don't say your name, don't make your username in Minecraft your full name or like your phone area code or whatever, or your birthday. But I think a lot of that changed in the age of social media, where it became almost like an expectation that you would share parts of your life online. And because we had this just like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. You know, when you post it on social media and right off the bat, like nothing goes wrong, nothing's bad, you're like, oh, yeah, this is fine. So I think it led to kind of this era of like feeling really comfortable with your personal information online. I mean, even I definitely went through a phase of that where like I had accounts where I would post stuff like pictures, you know, pictures at my house or like, you know, near where I lived. And I would just have people that I literally did not know following me. And I was like, oh, I have followers. Cool. So yeah, it's crazy. And I think instead of like, you know, I'm hoping that now internet education is like, okay, think of the balance of sharing things about your life, like kind of approaching it in a way where it's like, this is inevitable. Sharing stuff online is inevitable in the day and age we live in. So instead of just shutting it down as like, never do it, it's bad, like it will only be bad. Instead of doing that, I think taking this approach of like, okay, yes, you guys are all everyone's going to go on social media. Everybody's going to share stuff online. Let's think about how to do this smart. And so I've thought about that a lot more in the last couple of years. And it's crazy because I think there's other signs where like, think of some of the biggest content creators in the world. Most usernames of the biggest content creators are just their full name. And they talk about where they're from, what town they're from, where they went to school, like all this stuff. And I think it's like hopefully there's no negative consequence from that, but it is crazy to think about like how much of that stuff people do share. So I try to find that balance where I'm like, part of me is like, well, if they share everything, which I'm obviously not going to do, but they share so much. And like it seemingly isn't that much of an issue, or if it is an issue, they just don't talk about it online, which is smart, but yeah. What if I told y'all my name isn't actually David? Hold on. Just inhaled some coffee. What if I told you my name isn't David? David 27 lies. We had something similar and I don't even know what drugs were, and the dude's just screaming. I love how ours was like, you know, a cop came in and was talking about drugs and they're like, does anybody have any questions for me? And the first person, they're like, yeah, you in the front. Have you ever shot somebody? Like, my brother, it's 8:45 a.m. in 4th grade, and you just ask a police officer if he's ever shot somebody when he's just saying don't do drugs. This is crazy. My Minecraft name was Julia5090 because Julia was taken and I was an icon. Oh yeah, my Minecraft username was just straight up my full government name, which is wild. My dad had to be like, girl, don't add your last name. Yeah. It is crazy. Again, like a lot of stuff like that. Like I know people was just like Xbox names, just their name. Like, yeah. Also T40. Yeah. Rip the Jets. Pain. I was going to try to like keep up with that game and I kind of forgot about it because, I always like games start earlier here than I'm used to, on the West Coast. So it's like, I just checked and was like, oh shit. Saw that the Stars won. Pain. Rainbolt taught me to not share photos anywhere near my house ever. Yeah, I'm like, I hope people aren't going to the Rainbolt lengths when people show stuff online, but